Zion came home and said, hey, you called me Zaya and I'm ready to take on this.
You don't actually know what you're talking about. I know that I'm trans.
Zaya Wade, the daughter of Dwyane Wade and the stepdaughter of Gabrielle Union, had social media in a frenzy after posting a photo of her kissing her boyfriend, who was also transgender.
It isn't how you want to run your family. I have no choice but to respect that. But don't pretend as if it isn't an unpopular sentiment.
DL Hughley just drew a line in the sand, and he aimed it directly at Gabrielle Union. After Gabrielle went online yet again complaining that people won't stop talking about her family, specifically her transgender daughter Zaya, and the long-running rumors about Dwyane Wade's sexuality, DL came back with something that cut straight to the bone. His message was simple and surgical. If you keep walking your personal life onto the public stage, you don't get to be surprised when the audience starts talking.
Also disingenuous to believe that people aren't going to have an opinion of that.
Yeah.
If you make these things public, there are people going to have public assessments of it.
Right.
That's not an opinion. That's just the rules of the game Gabrielle herself chose to play. But DL wasn't just checking her etiquette. There was something deeper underneath what he was saying, and the culture heard it loud and clear. He was low-key suggesting that Gabrielle may have been the one engineering this narrative from the jump, that the public exposure of Zaya's transition and the whispers surrounding Dwyane's lifestyle didn't just leak out into the world accidentally, that somebody opened the door. And DL was pointing directly at Gabrielle as the one holding the handle. This isn't a new suspicion either. Jaguar Wright said something was off inside the Wade household a long time ago, and the internet never fully...
You and your I want to be a husband, convince your child that they need to get the whole trans thing going on now so they can get a Disney contract. And we all know what Disney does to children. Imagine what they do to trans kids.
Now here is where the story transforms from messy celebrity drama into something that genuinely shakes you. Because then Zaya's biological mother stepped forward, and what she alleged took this entire conversation to a completely different level. She didn't just push back on how Zaya was being raised. She claimed that Gabrielle had a hand in pushing Zaya toward transitioning, and that the motivation wasn't love, wasn't affirmation, wasn't about what was best for a child. She alleged it was about feeding something the industry wanted. Sit with that for a second. And it doesn't stop there. Zaya's biological mother also alleged that Dwyane weaponized his money and his connections to cut her out of her own child's life, specifically because she believed Zaya deserved the right to wait until adulthood before making permanent, irreversible medical decisions. She wanted her child to have time. She wanted options to remain open. And according to her, that position cost her access to her own daughter. That is not a small accusation. That is a mother alleging that the machine was used against her to silence her voice in her child's life. Now, there are people online connecting this to a much larger pattern, with some voices, including Cat Williams, raising questions about what they describe as industry rituals and pointing out what they see as a suspicious concentration of transgender children among Hollywood's elite.
I knew that in the ritual of Baphomet, the transgender, to show allegiance to him, you had to kiss his ring.
Really?
And it said both of those things. So I knew that both of those things would become popular in the future.
We're not here to confirm or deny what those people are claiming, but we are here to say that the pattern is what people are talking about. And this story sits right in the middle of it. So let's break this whole thing down from the foundation up. Gabrielle had gone public, again, frustrated that the world keeps weighing in on how she and Dwyane are raising their children, particularly Zaya. She framed it as outsiders policing a celebrity family, people who should just mind their business. But DL Hughley walked straight up to that argument and dismantled it. You made this public. You went on the press tours. You gave the interviews. You put it in the magazines. You cannot invite the world into your home and then demand they stand outside.
So I can't fault you for loving your child and protecting them and being proud of them. And it'd be equally, I can't fault people for having an opinion.
DL also made clear that he has serious reservations about Zaya undergoing gender-related surgery before turning 18. He said plainly that a child is not equipped to make decisions of that magnitude, decisions that are permanent and life-altering. And if we're being real with each other, that is a position that a significant majority of people across all political backgrounds quietly agree with, even if they won't say it out loud in the current climate.
I don't hate Dwyane Wade.
I just feel that your business stay behind closed doors and we don't need to know about how you are going to raise your child. But since you put your business out there, I'm going to voice my opinion.
Then Siobhan Funches, Dwyane's first wife and Zaya's birth mother, entered this conversation and fundamentally changed the entire stakes of it. Her allegation was not about parenting philosophy, it was about exploitation. She claimed that the push towards Zaya's transition was connected to delivering something the industry demanded. That is the accusation on the table.
I think going forward, I'm ready to live my truth. And I want to be referenced as she and her. I would love for you guys to call me Zaya. And so internally, now it's our job to, one, go out and get information, to reach out to every relationship that we have.
She and Dwyane go back to high school. They made it official in 2002, and that same year, they had their son, Zaire. 5 years later, Zion arrived. Dwyane has publicly stated that Zion, now Zaya, displayed signs of knowing her gender identity as early as age 3. She was 3 years old. What actually happened between Dwyane and Siobhan in the years that followed has been twisted and rewritten so many times, it's hard to separate the facts from the narrative. What is documented is that Dwyane filed for divorce in 2007, the same year Zaya was born, and what followed was one of the ugliest custody battles this industry has seen. Siobhan alleged that Dwyane's legal team manufactured false claims against her, that he had law enforcement and medical professionals in his corner painting her as mentally unfit, and that his wealth and influence were used as weapons to strip her of her credibility as a mother. She wasn't just losing a custody case, she was alleging that the system itself was turned against her. And then Gabrielle Union arrived in this family's orbit. Zaya came out as transgender in 2019, and almost immediately, Dwyane and Gabrielle launched a full media tour around it. That rollout was coordinated, that rollout was strategic, and that is exactly what has people asking questions. And then the brand deals started rolling in. Tiffany, Dove, major names, major money, major visibility, all attached to a teenager who had just come out.
It feels pretty amazing because Zaya is my date tonight, and for her to be able to see so many members of her community, of our community, that she's looked up to, that have inspired her, that have held her down, you know, had her back, is pretty huge. And there's not too many moments where I'm, as a parent, where I get to deliver that in this kind of way.
That timeline is not a coincidence. That is a calculated rollout, and the culture clocked it immediately. Because here's what bothered people the most. Zaya's entire public identity got collapsed into one thing, her transition. That's it. Every headline, every feature, every campaign, like she was a symbol before she was allowed to just be a person. And the fans who were raising flags about this weren't wrong. That level of non-stop exposure didn't just invite support, it invited predators, it invited hate, it invited the kind of creepy online behavior that no teenager should ever have to absorb. The jokes were vile, the commentary was worse, and all of it was preventable. Then other celebrities jumped in to weigh in on Zaya's coming out, and suddenly this child's personal life became a full industry conversation. Every voice added was another layer of exposure nobody asked for. If Dwyane and Gabrielle had moved with protection as the priority from day one, none of that access would have ever been granted. And that failure to protect becomes even harder to defend once you look at what was playing out in the courts at the same time. Because up until this point, you might have been willing to give Dwyane and Gabrielle the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were just proud parents, maybe they were just vocal allies. But what Zaya's biological mother, Siobhan, put on record in actual court documents blows that narrative completely apart. In August 2022, Dwyane filed legal paperwork to change Zaya's name and gender. That's a significant legal move. And almost immediately, Siobhan responded with her own court filing. And what she alleged in those documents should have been front-page news everywhere. According to Siobhan's legal filing, the custody agreement she and Dwyane established after their divorce specifically required him to consult her and get her input before making any major decisions affecting their children. We're talking care, health, education, welfare, religious upbringing, all of it. Major decisions required her involvement, and Siobhan's position was that this qualified. That's not a small procedural complaint. That's a mother saying the co-parenting agreement was being bypassed entirely on one of the most consequential decisions imaginable. But Siobhan didn't stop there. She went further. She alleged in her filing that Dwyane was positioned to financially profit from Zaya's name and gender change. Read that again and let it settle. This isn't a tabloid rumor. This is a sworn court document. A mother, in writing, under legal penalty, accused her child's father of standing to make money off of their child's transition. And then it gets even more specific, because Sivan didn't just make a general accusation. She claimed Dwyane told her directly. According to her filing in April 2022, Dwyane informed her that significant money had already been made and that more money would be coming in connection to Zaya's name and gender situation. She also alleged that Dwyane stated his intention to make Zaya famous through endorsements and contracts tied to her transition. And when Sivan pressed him on which companies were involved, she claims he told her multiple brands were interested and that Disney was among the prospective partners being discussed. Disney, let that land. We are talking about a child's most intimate personal journey potentially being packaged and sold to corporate entertainment infrastructure. That is the accusation on the table, not from gossip blogs, from the child's own mother, in court. Days after Sivan's filing went public, Dwyane took to Instagram to fight back. He went after Sivan directly, accusing her of making the situation about herself, of being an absent parent, of refusing to communicate with Zaya's teachers, doctors, and therapists. He denied profiting from any of it, denied forcing an identity on Zaya, and pointed the finger at outside critics as the source of any harm being done. He even threatened legal action and insisted that everything he and Gabrielle did was rooted in love and support for Zaya's authentic self. But the audience wasn't buying it. The fans who had watched this family operate for years, who had seen how quickly private moments became press opportunities, they sided with Sivan. The consensus was loud and clear. You cannot constantly put your family on display and then act victimized when the world has opinions. That's not how this works. You don't get to open the door and then act surprised that people walk through it. And some people went even harder, placing significant blame directly on Gabrielle. The criticism was pointed, that Gabrielle pushed to accelerate Zaya's public coming out rather than allowing the child to move at her own pace on her own terms. That a step-parent was driving decisions that weren't hers to drive. That something about the speed and the spectacle of all of it never felt like it was purely about Zaya. This is the verdict the culture landed on. And honestly, the receipts support it. If you're tired of the watered-down takes and want the real story behind what's happening in the culture, stick with BarzBuzz. We don't do PR. We don't do spin. Just the truth the industry doesn't want trending. Subscribe and make sure you're notified. The next one drops sooner than you think.